Welcome back to another episode of the Braun Performance and Rehab Podcast, powered by ISOFIT and Firefly Recovery. ISOFIT is my go-to for all things isometric strength training. For more on ISOFIT, be sure to check out isofit.com. Episodes like this are made possible by Firefly, the official recovery provider of the Braun Performance and Rehab Podcast. For more on Firefly, be sure to check out recoveryfirefly.com. This episode is powered by Dr. Ray Gorman, founder of Engage Movement. Learn how to boost your income without relying on sessions. Get a free training on the blended practice model by following at Ray Gorman DPT on Instagram. Joining me today on the podcast is Alexa Degan. Alexa and I are going to dive into her journey as an athlete in sport and surrounding her recovery from not one but two ACL injuries. We talk about all of that and more in this episode. Really good one. I know you're going to enjoy it. Alexa, welcome to the podcast. I'm super excited to work with you today. For people who aren't familiar with you and your incredible backstory that way, whether that's relating to hockey, whether that's relating to the knees and everything in between, would you mind filling me a little bit about who you are and all the stuff you have going on?
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Dan. I'm super excited to be on today. So I'm 20 years old. I'm from New Jersey. I tore both of my ACLs in high school. So I tore my left ACL in my ending of sophomore year on the field in lacrosse, and that was a contact injury. I tore my ACL, MCL, PCL, and meniscus. And in the surgery, doc tightened my IT band also. And then shortly after recovering from my left ACL, I tore my right ACL in an ice hockey game, and that was just my ACL. So yeah, I had both my knees done, and now I'm at Long Island University playing ice hockey. I just finished up my sophomore season, and I'm studying finance there.
There's so much to unpack with that. And we'll start with, first off, the fact that you play hockey. And contrary to what people on TikTok might think, or what some of these other people might think, when we say hockey, we mean ice hockey for you. We don't mean field hockey or anything like that. Like you play ice hockey. And I think that a lot of people just don't understand or don't even know about this world of ice hockey for women. I think a lot of times people think, oh, yeah, NHL or something like that, but they forget, like, oh my gosh, like there's so many phenomenal women's teams, and women's ice hockey is insanely fast paced and exciting as well that way. So kind of walk me through, how in the heck did we get into ice hockey growing up that way? And what made you decide, like, you know what, this is it for me. Like, I definitely want to play this in college, and so on that way.
Yeah, so my dad honestly just brought me and my older brother one day to the rink, and we they learned to skate, and then we did some stick and pucks, and then we got into private lessons. But I really just fell in love with the sport, like just being able to play it with my older brother. I think that was like the biggest thing for me. It was just something fun, and then we would have like a net at our house that we could shoot on, and we would rollerblade. So that was super fun. But yeah, I just fell in love with the sport at a really young age. I started when I was 7. My brother was 8. So we played together for a few years until, he had to play with the guys and do all the checking. And then I switched to an all-girls team. But I think it was just a great bonding experience for me and my brother, and we just really fell in love with it.
Absolutely. I love that you were able to kind of share that growing up that way. And it sounds like that sport in particular played such an integral part of you just growing up and becoming who you are today. That
Totally. Yeah. And my dad, he didn't even play, but he just enjoyed bringing us to the rink, and it was just really easy for him to go there and watch us have this fun on the ice. He started playing in like a men's league, so that was cool to go with my brother and just, hit the ice with him and then be able to see my dad do it too. So, yeah, it was so much fun.
Absolutely. And you were saying about the ACL injuries, and you said two of them, one in the left, one in the right knee, and you said they both stemmed from high school. So you were kind of going into college with them. Walk me through those ACL injuries. And I mean, the one, it sounds like you had a multiple structures in the knee injury. Like you mentioned, a lot of different things that way. And it's funny because when I'm talking with people about the knee injuries, I'm like, well, if you're going to do it, you might as well get your money's worth and get like three or four things out of it, right? Like get this
Yeah.
repaired, get that repaired, like go all in. I call it good for the plot. I don't know if that's the correct technical term for it. But it definitely makes the plot line a little bit interesting. So walk me through a little bit more about the knee injuries and what all of that entailed that way.
Yeah, so I'm from a small town in Jersey. It's Stillwater, it's called. And I went to school at Morristown-Beard, which is a private school. It was about an hour away from where I lived. And I went to this school because of the hockey program. Bruce Driver is the head coach there, and he's just an amazing coach. He's a former Devils player and captain. So I mainly went there to play hockey. And I played hockey there, I played lacrosse, and I played tennis. But hockey was is my main sport. And tearing my first ACL on the field playing lacrosse wasn't the most ideal thing, especially because it's like my side sport, just something that I'm doing for fun and just to stay fit and active. So that was a little frustrating to have torn my first ACL on the field. But when I tore my ACL, like I said, it was contact. So it was knee to knee in a running motion. And I had no idea at this point, like what an ACL was. I was so uneducated. So when I tore it, I heard my knee pop, and then I tried to walk on it. I like hobbled off to the sidelines, and then I was just sitting there and I was like, like what could that have been? Like that I just did to my knee. And I had no idea what an ACL was. So I just went home, went to sleep, and I thought I was going to be fine the next day, but my knee absolutely blew up and it was just so inflamed. And the next day I still went to school. I walked on it. But I was in a lot of pain. So I called my mom and I was like, there's something seriously wrong. And yeah, we went to the doctor, got an MRI, and we got it back a few days later. She was like, "Yeah, you have an ACL tear, and a few other things are torn in there too." And I honestly had no idea what an ACL tear entails at all. Like I didn't know that it was known as a career-ending injury, and I didn't know how serious it was at that point. But yeah, that's kind of how that went about. So yeah, I didn't know how serious it was at that point. And then I did a little bit of research and I realized, wow, like this is gonna be a journey for me. So I kind of just sit back and I got ready for what I was about to go through there.
Absolutely. And it's interesting to bring that up because I feel like once people hear the words ACL tear, they understand pretty quickly, like, oh my gosh, this is not
Mm.
good. But to your point, there's a lot of things that people don't quite grasp and understand about the injury, about the process, about how it happens, and so on that way. So, what did that kind of like self-education side of things look like for you? How did you go about kind of learning more about the injury, more about the recovery, and more on that kind of stuff yourself that way?
Yeah, I think first off, I was just kind of asking around, like, just to see if I knew anyone that had torn their ACL. And at the time, I mean, this was a few years ago, it wasn't that common in, people my age. I didn't really see it that common in my friends or anything. So that was a little tough for me. But I looked up and researched a lot about it. And I remember like looking at like NHL players, NFL players, and just seeing like that they got back to their sport after. And that's really what helped motivate me. Just seeing that, online, there are some people that it's career ending, but at the same time, there are these people that are getting back and are coming back to sport after their ACL tear. And that's what really helped me.
You kind of alluded to it's a very common injury in the sports world, the athletics world in particular, that way. And I think it's important to be able to have other individuals and other stories that you can lean on just to kind of help yourself throughout the process. Because as you know all too well, it's a long, grueling process. And there's days where it's just really freaking challenging. And it's like, if you don't have someone, even if it's just a story of someone else who's been through something similar to kind of like lean on during that time, or you don't have like a robust support system built up around you, it makes the process a lot more difficult, in my opinion, because as you mentioned, there's a lot of information that goes into it. And there's also, for every piece of good information out there, I've seen a fair amount of poor information out there as well. There was just an individual I was working with the other day whose doctor told her, for the first month up to 6 weeks after surgery, stay at home, don't do anything after her ACL surgery because her body needs to recover. And unfortunately, she ended up getting a whole second surgery shortly after that because of the amount of scar tissue that built up in her knee. And she wasn't able to get her range of motion back because she just didn't know to start moving her knee. So I think that for all the information that's out there, as I mentioned, there's also poor information. And I think making sure that you go about the process of surrounding yourself with great people, but also building a support system and including some other success stories of individuals in that support system to know and kind of remind yourself like, hey, this is not the first time this has ever happened. Like other people have overcome this before. I can also do it. I just need to kind of keep my foot on the gas. I think those little regular reminders are really, really essential for you.
Yeah, totally. I agree. I mean, like you said, there's a lot of like false information out there on how to deal with an ACL recovery. Doctors have all these different methods, and I think that was the biggest challenge that I went through in my first surgery was just not knowing what was right and what was wrong of me to do post-surgery. So that was really hard for me because, you know, one doctor is telling you to do one thing, one PT is telling you to do another, and it's like you really want to have everybody on the same page and you want to be getting the right information in that. And I just felt like I wasn't really getting that. So that was the hardest thing.
How were you able to sort through that for yourself? What was that process like for you of figuring out who your PT is going to be, who your surgeon's going to be? What kind of things did you look for? What went well? What maybe could have been better?
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of trial and error. I think bedside manner for with the doctor is just huge for me, and just having PT that are there for me mentally and can help me through this, because it's not just like a physical injury, it's so mental. So having people there to support me, I don't want to be looked at as, just another patient. Like I want them to be there for me. I want them to know me. I want to be able to call them and ask them these questions and I want answers. So I think that's the biggest thing.
Absolutely. Having someone that's there that can support you throughout the process is absolutely essential. And someone who believes in you, right? You don't want someone who's going to come in and say, like, well, I don't think this is going to be a good idea. You'll never play sport again. Like, no one wants to hear that. That's not the energy we're here for. Those are not good vibes. So it's like, I'm not personally going to surround myself with people like that. Like, that's just not the kind of people we need in our life, unfortunately. And this rehab process, even though it can be a long time, right? 9 to 12 months, it's still too short to have the wrong influences in the picture during that time. So I think to your point, making sure you surround yourself with the best people who support you, who know you can get back, who are going to help you get back, and even those that have helped others get back, right? Like, look at their resume. Like, I mentioned this on a podcast just the other week. I encourage patients to interview their PTs and their surgeons to the same effect that they're interviewing you to try and understand what happened and how they can help you, right? Ask them questions. Have they worked with individuals like yourself in the past? If so, what went well? What could they have done better? And I think the more open and honest they are about that, the better you're going to be able to determine who your right people are to kind of form that team around you, whether that be surgeon, rehab provider, or whatever that way. And I think just their willingness to take the time and answer those questions and sit with you through those things will also tell you a lot about their character and the effect that they can have during your rehab process.
Yeah, I agree. And after my second ACL, I had a great physical therapy like staff that I worked with. I remember coming there after school and just being so bummed out and so feeling so low, just just having an off day. And the biggest thing for me was, having these people able to make me laugh and just like genuinely ask me like, how are you? And I remember, when people would ask me how I was, I would just be like, yeah, I'm good. But they would dig deeper and they would be like, are you really okay today? And that's really what I needed. Like I just needed somebody to pull it out of me that, you know, you're not having the best day and why is this? And I think that's what helped me mentally and it helped me physically too because, once you fix the mental aspect, I think that that helps a lot with your physical aspect too.
Well, I would assume there's almost a little bit of a identity crisis that occurs following an injury like this. Like you mentioned, you were playing hockey since 7 years old, and now not only are you trying to navigate your teenage years, which for some people can be, a little bit of a roller coaster that way, but you've also got to deal with this effect of a debilitating injury, and now I'm going, about a year roughly without the sport that I've played for, as long as I can remember that way. So I think it just creates this like little bit of an identity crisis. And I don't think people give it enough credit for how impactful this time can be for athletes that way. Like it's challenging, it's trying, don't get me wrong, but also I think if you take advantage of this time as an opportunity to step back, reassess everything and figure out, hey, what can I do to kind of help myself dial in now? What can I do to rebuild myself, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, and so on as well during this time?
Yeah, I agree. I think, like you mentioned, I mean, the biggest part was just having to sit out of the sport that I loved for, you know, not only one season, but 3 seasons. So I missed my junior season of hockey, my senior season of hockey, and then I missed my freshman season at college. I redshirted there. And I think it was just like the easiest thing was being a cheerleader for my teammates. Like that is something that I absolutely love and I love seeing my teammates succeed. But I think the hardest thing was like me not being able to touch the ice and to work on this sport that I've been working so hard on for all these years and just not being able to get back like in that moment, that was tough for me.
Absolutely. But to your point, it sounds like you were around your team, which obviously it's difficult being around them and not playing, as you mentioned, but it sounds like you're able to be a part of the team still, which is something that I feel like we need to all collectively do a better job of. Is a lot of times athletes, when they're injured, they feel like they're separate from the team and they're no longer part of the team that way. And it's like, I feel like we can change the narrative on that. Like, even if you're just going to the practices, going to the games, not playing, but still watching. Like, I feel like the more inclusive we can be of keeping you as part of the team, the better off everything is going to be.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's the biggest thing that, it was hard going to the rink and not being able to go on the ice, put my gear on. Like, of course, that is hard. And, but it's just awesome to be there for your team. And I think that's your obligation as a teammate. That's one of the most important parts. I mean, when I'm not able to hit the ice. Like it's fun just being able to watch my team win. I mean, it's okay to watch my team lose too. Like we have to get through these things together. And I think a hard thing is that I've seen people tear their ACLs, whether it's on the ice or in another sport, and they do kind of exclude themselves from the team, and that does isolate you mentally. And it hurts you, I think, definitely, because having my team there for me while I was going through this was so helpful. Everybody was just so supportive and just making sure that you have a team that is in that way for you is so important because, you need to make sure you have a good team that's going to be for you through this injury, especially because it's such a big injury.
Absolutely. And you mentioned before that after you returned to sport following the initial knee injury, you shortly afterwards injured the right side. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
And you said it was what, like 3 or 5 games?
Yeah, I mean, it was just, I think it was 12 months after my first ACL. Like, I'm just recovered, just hitting the ice again. And we had a showcase. It was in the summer, and we were in Connecticut. And yeah, I tore it there. It was like my third game back, and it was really disappointing.
Did that
But
make the second knee recovery journey more difficult than the first because you were just getting back, just getting that excitement of emotion wave in, and then, oh my gosh, now I've got to go through this all over again? Or was it a little bit easier because, hey, I already had this happen. I know what the process looks like. I know what it's going to entail that way. What was that kind of like for you?
I think it was honestly a mix of both. I think the biggest thing that was tough for me was just like, all right, this is like another season of no hockey. That was like the hardest thing for me. But I think I was way more educated this time around, and I just understood the rehab part of it. I knew what I did wrong the first time and what I wanted to do right the second time around. So I think just knowing my stuff and just being comfortable with it at this point was super helpful for me. And also, like being able to switch my mindset was huge the second time around.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it sucks that you had to go through it twice, but it sounds like you were able to learn a lot in the process, just about yourself and about so many other aspects of life, for lack of
Mhm.
a better way to put it, just throughout this extended rehab time, if you will.
Totally. I think switching your mentality, especially going through, a big injury like ACL, is just super important. That's going to push you in PT, in all your rehab, in the gym, on the ice, on the field. And that's just super important. But yeah, I think that both of my injuries just really opened my eyes and just gave me like this new perspective of like life, honestly. And I've learned so much throughout my two surgeries that like I will take with me forever. So I'm so grateful for them.
Does that impact or influence what you want to do in the future at all, right? Like, does this make you want to be like an orthopedic surgeon or a PT or something like that? Or
Well, not really. I mean, I've been asked that a lot, honestly. But um maybe like a personal trainer. I've thought about that. But I am studying finance right now, and I've been on that track for, 2 years now. But yeah, I think personal training would be really, really cool. Right now I actually work with Athlete to Athlete. I don't know if you've heard of that company. But I meet young female hockey athletes and I mentor them every week. And we just hop on a Zoom and I tell them, my experience as a hockey player, as somebody who's been injured, who's experienced all these obstacles. And I just try and, help them through what they're going through at their career point. So, yeah, I think that's really fun for me. And my injuries have helped me be able to want to share my story and help others.
yeah, and I'd imagine there's nothing more fulfilling than being able to turn around, give back, and help others that way. And I think that's something you also do quite a bit through the power of social media as well, correct?
Yeah, so after my first ACL and I just got the news back that I tore my second ACL, me and my mom were sitting on the couch and I was a little bummed about, tearing my ACL again. And I was just like, what can I do right now to turn this negative thing into something positive and to help me and to help others um, through what I'm experiencing? And I just sat there and I was like, Mom, I think I want to make an Instagram or I want to start like a social. And I was like, can you help me with a name for it? I want to create this account where I share my progress, my journey, and she helped me with the name. And she was like, I think Torn to Triumphant would be a great name for this Instagram. And I was like, oh my gosh, I think that's awesome. Like, I love that because I think it has like such a great story behind it because not only am I torn physically, and then I'm building up to being triumphant physically, but it's also the mental aspect to it that I love too, because you are so torn when you find out that you have this injury and you're torn for months and months and months, and then you eventually like crack the code and you're like, wow, like I made it out of this. And, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. So I think that making this Instagram and just sharing my story and being able to connect with people that are going through similar things, or maybe not even, ACL, but other injuries, and being able to help them mentally, I think that's just super important to me, like you said, to just give back because my first ACL, I feel like I didn't have someone to turn to and ask questions, and that's what made it super hard, super lonely, and I just felt like I was going through it by myself. But I think the main thing was to create this Instagram so that I could be somebody that people can turn to and like lean on and ask questions. So, yeah, that was the importance behind it.
Quick break because if you're a rehab professional sick of burnout, this could be your answer. Engage Movement's blended practice model is a proven system built by Dr. Ray Gorman, a PT who walked away from the 55-hour-a-week grind and built a blended practice model that doubled his income while working less than 25 hours a week, and he didn't have to rely on the traditional way of selling sessions to do so. It's all about blending remote and in-person services, stacking monthly recurring revenue, and building a business that finally supports your life, not the other way around. This model isn't just theory. Real providers, including myself, are creating lives of freedom and flexibility without being tied to their schedule. And as a listener, you get free access to the complete training. DM my name, Dan, to @RayGormanDPT on Instagram and receive your free breakdown on the model. What's been your process for kind of building that up? Because I've noticed you've done a lot of different things. You've had people do account takeovers and all that sort of thing. How did you get to this point, and what's kind of your process to continue to grow that and have the impact that you're after?
Yeah, well, I just started off by posting just the two ACLs and how they happened and kind of where I was at in the process. And along my journey, I just, daily I post, how my knees are feeling, what I'm doing, PT and just rehab wise, what I do in the gym, what I do nutritionally. I mean, being a Division 1 athlete too, like I just show like my day to day with that and like my struggles, my obstacles that I go through. So I think it's just super important to share like the mental side of things, the physical side of things, and knowing that, my situation is different than everyone else's, but just being able to share my story because maybe it could touch someone else and help them in a way. And also just being able to reach out to other people. So that's just huge for me. Like the takeovers, I was at Long Island and I was just asking a few athletes like in the physical therapy rooms, and I was just like, I really want to hear your story, and I think that other people would love to too. Like, would you want to take over my Instagram and just, show what you're all about, like what you went through? And I think that was just super fun for me and just so fun to see, their story and what they went through.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love that. It becomes that power of building a platform and allowing others to use that platform to share their own journey, their own experiences, their own successes, their own failures, and just all the
Yeah.
obstacles that came in their way during that process. Because obviously, you're going to grow through what you go through during this time that way. Outside of the physical and mental components of obstacles that way, was there anything else that really challenged you in particular during this time? And how did you overcome that? Because I've had some individuals tell me that they feel like ACL recovery is like death by a thousand paper cuts. It's like can't be with the team, not playing sport, stuck in PT, all these different things that way. And then these other life storms that just kind of form and find their way into the picture that way, for lack of a better way to put it. They just feel very overwhelmed by the whole thing. And how have you been successful in the process of overcoming all of those different things along the way?
Yeah, I love this question. So, as I was going through my first ACL, a very close friend of mine actually passed from suicide. And I think that that was something that totally changed my perspective on life and just what I was going through because I remember like going through this hard thing, this ACL injury, and and then this happens in my life and I'm like, wow, like nothing can get worse than losing someone to suicide. And just realizing that like somebody is going through something so much harder than, what I'm going through. And that's really what pushed me every single day in the gym, on the ice. In PT, like doing rehab, was just realizing that this is something so little compared to like, what other people are going through mentally, to have to take their life. And I think that's what helped me. And, obviously it was really hard and it was like a blessing in disguise because it made me so grateful for, what for my life and what I was going through. So I think that's what helped me like just totally change my mentality of things and just always look positively.
Absolutely, the power of positivity and trying to find the brighter side of gray because to your point, it's very difficult sometimes, especially when you're dealing with the loss of friends, family, loved ones, whatever it is that way, is that stuff never comes there's no good time for that to ever occur that way. And it's difficult, it's challenging, but I found at least for myself when stuff like that happens, it's that opportunity, kind of like you said, pause, reflect, and just realize, like, oh my gosh, I have so much to be thankful for. I have to have so much gratitude. Like, how many people have all these different dreams and goals and aspirations, but for whatever reason, unfortunately, life doesn't give them the opportunity to pursue them. But guess what? I have the opportunity to do that. I have the opportunity to pursue them. And yes, I've got some setbacks along the way. Yes, there's some challenges, but what a blessing it is to be able to experience those things, right? How awesome is it that you get to experience the highs and lows and the full spectrum of everything that life has to offer? Obviously we don't wish bad things on anyone. However, if you're someone who goes through bad things and overcomes them and beats them back and just continues on your path, like it gives you this newfound energy for life and everything that comes with it that you're not going to get anywhere else. Like the amount of athletes I've worked with following ACL injuries that look at me afterwards when they're back to sport and playing and back to that life is good, that look at me and say, I'm thankful this happened to me. And at the time, at the first couple times it came up, it kind of like just left me speechless. I was like, are you sure? Like you're glad this happened? But after a while, I started to connect the dots, and it's like, there's something about, I don't know if it's the power of delayed gratification or what the, technical term is for this. There's something about this process of literally going from like I can't even walk all the way back to your sport and beyond in a year that has some kind of powerful transformative effect on people, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree. And going off of that, like just seeing yourself be so high and then be so low, along this journey is just what helps like strengthen like and show you that there are these obstacles that are just gonna like appear out of nowhere and like you are going to overcome them. And I think that just helped me, yeah, just look at life differently and just realize that this is what life is. Like there are gonna be so much bigger, harder challenges that I'm going to face, and just knowing that like I can get through them is the biggest thing.
Absolutely. It's like, well, look at how far I've come. Look at how much I've overcome already. The next thing that gets thrown your way, you're like, well, I've been through all of this, so this is nothing to me. This is easy. I
Yeah.
can push that back, no problem.
Yeah, I agree.
One of the many things that I found, and this is nothing in comparison to the difficulties that come with ACL or that come with losing someone close to you that way. But one of the things I've found difficult for at least myself, and it comes up a lot when I'm talking with athletes as well, is they recognize how powerful of a tool social media can be. But for some reason, there's something within them. I don't know if it's a fear or what it is that they don't want to create a social media profile and share their journey. They don't want people to see them when they're at their lowest moments that way. What gave you the courage to do that? And what advice do you have for other athletes who are going through stuff similar to what you've been through about just sharing, the highs and lows and just everything that comes with that journey?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have that fear of like not wanting to show like how hard it is and like the difficulties that I'm going through, and maybe like to show, the days that I'm having no progress, or, I'm very low. I enjoy like showing that because I know that other people are going through the same thing, and I would get that like positive feedback. Like people would be like, wow, like you're going through this because this just happened to me and I feel the exact same way. And I kind of like loved hearing that and seeing that because it gave me comfort that I'm giving someone else comfort. So I think that was like the biggest thing for me, is because like they're supporting me and they're seeing that like I'm going through this hard thing, and I'm sharing like the raw, downside of, stuff. And, they're coming back at me and they're being like, wow, like I really had no idea that other people were dealing with this and going through this. So I think that was the biggest thing, was seeing that like, you know, people are also going through what you're going through and the hard stuff. And that was important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's other people that are in similar situations. And again, it's a matter of how do we help those individuals? And I think again, it takes a certain level of comfort and confidence in order to do these things, right? Like you have to open yourself up from a vulnerability standpoint first. Like you have to show the world that, hey, look, I'm not always at 100%. But
Hmm.
that's okay because no one is always at 100%, right? Like I feel like sometimes we look at social media like this highlight reel of just all the highs and all the things that are going well. And I mean, we're all guilty of it to a certain extent, but it's like it's also sometimes important to show and remind people that, hey, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. There's bumps in the road. And if you're someone who's experiencing those bumps in the road, you're not alone and it's okay. And, we're going to kind of build a little community around this and get through it together.
Yeah. And also some advice that I would give that helped me along, my journey, was just that it's you versus you the entire time, every single day. I just always say this to myself. It's you versus you, whether I'm on the ice, whether I'm in school, no matter what I'm doing. If I, fall down, to not stay down and just to build myself right back up, and just compare yourself to you, not the person next to you, because they're going through a totally different thing. And to ensure that you are going to make progress, you just need to like face yourself and just be like, I want to beat you. And like that's what I would just say to myself. I just want to beat the yesterday me. And that's what helped me throughout my journey.
Absolutely, making it an internal competition instead of you trying to compete with other people. There is plenty of time to compete with others once you're back to sport, right? You're going to want to win, you're going to want to win games and that sort of thing, and that's great. But when it comes to some of these other personal things, like I think to the point you made, it makes a lot more sense to me, anyways, to make it you versus you instead of you versus everyone else because everyone's journey is different. Their surgeon's different, there's different graft types, there's all these different factors that go into it, and it's like you really cannot compare one person's journey to another because there's just so many different factors that go into it. I mean, even with that said, I guess we didn't even talk about like what graft you had and different things that way and what went into that, and there's a lot of different considerations that go into that. But did you end up with like a quad graft, patellar tendon graft, cadaver, hamstring, and what was kind of the thought process there?
So my left ACL, MCL, PCL, meniscus, and IT band surgery, that was quad. And then my right ACL was patella. And I had two different surgeons for my injuries. So they both recommended, the different grafts, and that's why I went with two different ones. So that was kind of how that happened.
It's a surgeon comfort piece as well. Like there's a surgeon that I really like who does not do quad tendon grafts. So naturally, if someone goes to him and they ask for a quad tendon graft, it's not necessarily the right fit that way. So I think it comes back to what we talked about before, knowing the people that you surround yourself with, knowing what they're comfortable with, what their experience is, and so on that way. It's really just taking all these different puzzle pieces and putting them together in a way that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think like I love the quad graft for my left ACL. I mean, I know I got a lot done in that surgery, but the quad graft, I don't have much patella tendonitis, but I noticed that with my patella graft, I have a lot more patella tendonitis, and I'm not sure if it has to do with like the different grafts, but that's just something that I picked up along like my rehab.
Typically, what I hear from people is the quad tendon graft is less painful. However, they feel like it's more difficult for them to get their quad strength back, especially early on. Now, you having the experience of literally having one of each that way, which one was more difficult for what reason that way? Like, what obstacles or challenges did the left present that the right didn't, and vice versa?
I have to say, I think my right was more difficult physically just because of the compensation and them being like back to back from each other. I think that was like the hardest thing because, I was just recovered from my first ACL, and then I tore my second ACL. So it was like, I don't know, all the compensation. I think that like it was just hard for me to continue to build like a muscle in my left ACL that I was just getting back. And now having to like completely go from like, 0% and build up to 100% strength in my right ACL too.
Absolutely. And you mentioned before too about nutrition and fitness and gym and all these different things that play into it as well. What does that all look like for you? Like, are we hitting Pilates? Are we crushing the weights in the gym? Some little bench press, that sort of thing. What's the nutrition like? Like, walk me kind of through all these other factors that go into it as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that nutrition and just being active are so important, and I've made it such a lifestyle for me. And like I'm not just doing eating right and going to the gym just for my hockey career, but I'm doing it for my life and doing it for my lifestyle. So I think typically for me is like just being active like once or twice a day and making that a habit is huge. If I can't get to the gym, I'm going, for a walk, a long walk, like 5 mile walk. But I love lifting. I've done Pilates. I've tried it out. I love Pilates. But I've only done it like once. But like I love yoga, anything active and anything physical just to make my body feel good is super important for me. And nutritionally, I would say just whole foods. I love like just, going to the grocery store and being able to buy like fruits and like the organic stuff. So that's really important for me. But I also had a really hard time freshman year, like understanding, you know, the macronutrients that you need to have on your plate. So that played a huge role with what I was going through too with ACL because your nutrition is so important when you're recovering and in your rehab, just to make your body feel good. So I did some research on that, and we also have like a team nutritionist. So she was super helpful, but I started to understand like carbs are so important, and protein is so important, fat is so important, fiber is so important. So all of this stuff like I started to incorporate in my day-to-day life, and I realized, wow, like this is really helping me feel good mentally, physically, and I just made it a habit to go to the gym even when I'm not feeling motivated and I'm not having a great day, but making sure that I get to the gym and move my body in some sort of way, whether that's just stretching or it's just going for a walk or it's lifting weights. So yeah, I think that was super important for me and just taking pride in how I feel mentally and just how I feel physically was super important throughout, my ACL injuries and just rehabbing from them.
Absolutely. I love everything about that. I mean, as you mentioned, just dialing in everything from the nutrition to the fitness and beyond. And it sounds like you're able to set yourself up for success beyond just sporting career, as you mentioned. It's not just about sport or performance, it's about actually being active for life and being healthy for life. And it sounds like, again, kind of like we talked about before, using this as an opportunity to dial in all those areas. I mean, it sounds like you did that exceptionally well.
Yeah, and I've just absolutely loved it. I mean, it's been a lot of trial and error, just figuring out like what my body, likes to take in and what kind of activities I like. And also another thing that was tough after my first ACL was definitely like overloading my body, just doing like too much and not letting my body rest because I'm just like a go 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 person. Like I love the gym. I love being on the ice. I love being active, but when you are recovering, I realized that like being go 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 and just like pushing your body too far, that can set you back, and it did set me back a few times. And my physical therapist and even like people at school, like my coaches, they were like, all right, you gotta chill. You gotta like stay off the Peloton after we just did a team workout and after you had physical therapy. And it was really hard for me to do that mentally because my escape was, being on the Peloton or, going for a long walk. But, the next day there would be repercussions and I would be sore, I would be swollen, and they would be like, why do you think you feel like this? And I would be like, well, I did this, 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 and this yesterday. And they were like, okay, that's why. So I think that was also a huge challenge that I went through um, the first time around after surgery. But I learned that like I need to relax sometimes, especially going through an ACL injury.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sometimes we move forward faster if we actually take our foot off the gas a little bit. And it's a very difficult concept to learn and grasp, but it definitely holds true a lot of the time that way. Alexa, I realize we could probably talk about this all day long that way because there's just so much that falls into this world of you as a person, your sports career, your injuries, and so on that way. Is there anything we missed as we were chatting today?
Honestly, I think we hit a lot of great points. I loved everything that we talked about. I don't think that we missed anything.
Awesome. For people who want to find out more about you, find you on Instagram, and find out more about the work that you do with athlete to athlete or the stuff you do through Athlete Zone, whether that's the Torn to Triumphant stuff or the Long Live Lenny stuff, where can they find you all at?
Yeah, so my LinkedIn is just going to be my name, which is Alexa Degan. Degan is my last name. And Torn to Triumphant is just torn. And then it's actually the number two, which symbolizes me having both of my ACLs done. And then Torn to Triumphant. And then, yeah, my Instagram is just Alexa Degan. So that's where you guys can find me.
Awesome. We'll link to all of that in the description below. That way, if you didn't quite catch it, you can just click there and find Alexa on all the different platforms. Alexa, this was awesome. I really appreciate your time. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Dan. I had so much fun and I appreciate you so much.